Welcome, everyone. Thanks for joining. We're going to allow just a few moments for folks to get logged in. I hope everyone is having a great day so far.
Well, I know I'm having a good day just being here with you guys.
Same. Yeah. Love it. Look at all these
The room's
attendees
filling up.
filtering in. I see some familiar names. Love that. We're just going to allow like a minute for folks to get logged in. We had a lot of people registered, so we'll let them slowly filter in.
Yep, this is going to be a good group today.
Yes, it is. Love it. I'm just scrolling through the names to see who I know, and I love seeing familiar names. Awesome. Okay, we're just going to allow a few more seconds. I know folks will slowly start to continue to join, but we've got a jam-packed session today, and I want to get right to the good stuff. So thank you all so much for joining. We're excited that you could hang out with us today and talk about one of the biggest trends since the Great Resignation, and that is the impact of employee silence. What you don't know can hurt you. So thank you for joining. I know we still have people filtering in, but go ahead and drop us a chat as you arrive and let us know where you're tuning in from. We actually were just chatting about where we're located today, and I'm south of Seattle towards the base of Mount Rainier. And Jen, where are you at today?
I am in Orange County, California. So we're getting some nice California fallish weather, which means about, in the 60s, which is great.
Yeah, awesome. And then Clint, where are you at today?
I am in Florida. Originally home is Utah, but on the road today. I speak for an organization tonight. So Florida is home for the day.
Love it. We've got some Michigan. We've got some more California, Texas, Ohio. We are a little bit of everywhere, which is awesome. Spokane, Holler, Washington State. Love it.
I see some Boise, Idaho's. That's my hometown. Hello, everybody.
Yeah, it's so fun to see how connected this industry is across the entire United States. So without further ado, we're going to go ahead and just dive on in. And again, thank you so much for joining us for the impact of employee silence. What you don't know can hurt you. So for those of you who don't know me, my name is Jessica Fern Kirkland, and I am the Senior Director of Multifamily Product Management. There's going to be a test on that later. Just kidding. And I work here at Grace Hill by day and am a organizational psychology student by night. So this is such a timely topic for us. And when I was thinking about who would be the best to help take this topic on with me, it is the panelists that you see here with me. So I am so thrilled to have Jen Picotti. She's the Chief Learning Officer at Swift Bunny. And her and I have kind of seen each other around on the speaking scene. And she got her start in property management in 2000. And so she's had the last 2 decades listening to, learning from, and finding solutions for multifamily residents, employees, and executives, which I've had the pleasure of hearing her speak on the speaking scene, and love what she does at Swift Bunny. And she's had the opportunity to connect the dots between data, performance, and progress. And then Clint, he and I connected, year and a half ago now, and he did the most incredible virtual keynote session when I was in my previous role at FPI and just knocked us off our socks as an expert on employee retention. He's a best-selling author and was featured in Business Q magazine as a top 40 under 40. As a professional drummer, he also appeared in feature films and on America's Got Talent. And in 2020, Clint won an Emmy Award for his short film, Be a Mr. Jensen, which is the video that I first saw that really prompted me to reach out to him and have him come speak to our organization. And it tells just such an amazing story about how mentorship can change the course of a life. And he's also the author of today's book giveaway, which stay tuned to the end. If you registered, you're automatically entered to win the book giveaway titled I Love It Here, that was released earlier this year. So thank you so much for both of you for joining me today.
You're welcome.
So fun to be here.
It's an honor.
Perfect. So we are going to just dive right in. And the first thing that we're going to do is just cover some learning objectives. And we're going to talk about disengaged employees. Of course, we're going to talk about quiet quitting, quiet firing. And by the end of our session, you're going to be able to understand how to help manage employee retention and engagement and feel empowered to make a difference to individuals in your organization and who you work with and those that are even colleagues or coworkers. So we wanted to first start by setting the context of what employees are looking for now and then what employers are looking for, which we'll cover on the next slide. And in today's environment, I don't think that it is a shock that it's a little bit different, right, with what employees are really looking for and what we're really advocating for ourselves, especially in multifamily. We've seen, multifamily historically be a little bit behind the curve, and it's a fast-paced industry. It's not the easiest thing to do, but we're really seeing these trends with employees wanting a purposeful culture. They want to be connected to something that's meaningful. We're caring about our career development and wanting to know where can we feel connected to and meaningfully contribute to our organizations. There's so many things that change with COVID, right? The thinking about a hybrid work environment would have never been on the table before in multifamily. And, now that's something that we're really wanting alongside wellness and job tools and training. We want to be set up for success with how we do our jobs. And employers, we've got income and market growth, and it's a very interesting economic time in multifamily right now. We've got things like inflation and building supply changes and, organizational growth and national housing undersupply crisis that's really impacting our industry. As a whole, there's a lot of turnover in multifamily. It's about 12% higher than the national average. And so employers are really struggling with how to manage keeping employees where they're at, making sure we've got customer retention, employee retention, all of that managed, while also bridging the gap between the skills, wants, and needs of yesterday and what we're really looking for now, which is really exciting in multifamily because instances like this is what causes industry change. And I'm personally excited about that. And today we're going to help you navigate some of the weird, uncomfortable changes that can happen when you're in the midst of that change, because we know that it's not easy. And there are things that we'll have to manage in order to set our organizations up for success. So when demands are up, right, engagement can sometimes go down, especially when we've got a disconnection, maybe when employer resources, or we're not sure how to move forward and create a strong culture or support all of the different generations that are now working for us. This can lead to employee disengagement. And we know that that causes a organizational impact. And we want to make sure that we are really hearing our employees and listening to our employees, but they haven't really been talking to us, right? So that's what today is about, is breaking the silence. And this is the kind of the newer trend, right? We had the Great Resignation where folks were just, I'm out of here. And they didn't really say anything. There was no sign, they're just, I'm out of here. And now we are in we're not going to say anything, just kind of keep it to myself. And I loved thinking about this like no response is a response, because we know that outside of verbal communication, there is all sorts of communication, and our actions and nonverbal communication and the way that we behave and our attitudes say so much about how connected we feel to our organization. So we're going to dive right in and talk about the first trend, which is quiet quitting. And I wanted to first define what exactly this is, so that way we've got some context in the event that this is a new term for you. But it is the reverse hustle. And it's when an employee who is no longer engaged in uplifting their role and has resigned to meeting the minimum job requirements. And before we explain or elaborate on this any further, I want to know whether you feel if this is laziness or being an underperformer, or is this setting boundaries? So Jen, do you think that quiet quitting is you're lazy and entitled, or setting boundaries?
I think it's a little bit of that and more. I think that people are tired, first and foremost. We are exhausted as a community, as individuals. We were basically sprinting for the past 2.5 years through the pandemic of just trying to manage everything, because there was no default, there was no cruise control. Every single day, especially in our industry, was something different and new that we didn't have a set response for. And so there was no just coasting and just relying on how we've done things before. So there was no downtime. So we are truly exhausted. And we're starting to see some come out of that, but I think some people are less like, whoa, I need a break. and maybe not lazy, but just worn out. And then the other side of that is setting boundaries, because I think so many of us, I can say this for myself, large part of my identity was what I did, was my job, was my title. And I think when we invest all in and we put our job and our work above everything else, I think the reset that we had was, you know what? There's more to my life than just work. I am more than just my title. I have other responsibilities. And I think, especially as a parent, I realized that my job and my obligation to my children and to my husband, they needed me more than I thought they did in some areas. Or I said, you know what, I need to be paying more attention to certain things. And so I am setting boundaries. And so I think people are setting that boundary more. They're exhausted a little bit more. And I think that they also just want to be more involved in the conversation of what does work look like. And that may be contributing to what this is as well.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an interesting paradigm shift, right? Where we felt like our self-worth was tied to how much we're putting in. I mean, if you are not working after hours and you are not working weekends, are you even working at all? And
Right.
that's something that is, definitely changing for our industry. So the next one is quiet firing. And quiet firing refers to a situation which employees feel their managers are subtly encouraging them to leave the workplace at their own discretion rather than being terminated. So I would love, Clint, for you to kind of weigh in. And is quiet firing from, a manager perspective, is that passive aggressive or lack of leadership skills?
I think both things that we've talked about thus far, whether it's quiet quitting or it's quiet firing, these dynamics have been happening for years, not just during the pandemic. This is not new. There are things in our industries that tend to trend very quickly, such as the Great Resignation or the Great Reentry, or these key phrases such as quiet quitting. But it's been an issue, honestly, probably since the day one of somebody being employed, right? Where they don't just quit, but they mentally check out and then they stay, and vice versa for the leader. They're kind of in the position of leadership, but they're not really truly leading. They don't understand what it means to really manage or to mentor and what that looks like. Oftentimes because the leader above them doesn't know how to do it as well, or they've checked out. In our research as the undercover millennial, there was always 4 types of managers that we found. And I think this could be helpful within, the quiet firing issue. There was always two variables that we could determine a manager's success and their relevancy within the job and their effectiveness in the job. And those two variables were their standards that they upheld in the organization. And then second, their ability to connect. Standards and connection. The first manager that we found was the removed manager. And we're finding this more and more currently, the people that are just burnt out, they're done. They literally look at the last 2 years of COVID, and they feel like they've been living on an episode of Survivor, saying, vote me off, I'm out. So they're low on standards. They're also low on connection. So what did this create in the employee experience? Disengagement. The employees became removed because the manager's removed. You could care less if I show up on time. You don't even know my name. Why should I show up on time and do the things that you're asking? Why would I go above and beyond for you? The second manager was the buddy manager. This is also fairly prevalent right now. These are the managers that want to be liked more than they're respected. They just want everybody to love them. So they're really low on standards, high on connection. These are the managers. They'll go play Xbox on the weekends with the team, and then Monday morning they're like, "All right, we got to do better." And everyone's like, "I just saved you in Call of Duty on Friday, Frank, and now what? Now you're the manager." So it created a sense of entitlement. And so we see this dynamic between employee and boss where, come on, we're friends. I deserve more. This is where the employees are actually becoming more of the managers than the managers. The third is the controller. This is the manager that right now very high on standards, low on connection. Welcome back to the office. Okay, you had 2 years off. My way or the highway, command and control. You want me to love you? Smile. I give you a paycheck. Tomorrow's going to be worse. So high on standards, low on connection. So what did this create, and what is this creating in the employee experience right now? Rebellion. This is pushback. This is where a manager's going head to head with every employee, and some managers get some sick kick out of this. And at times in our research, we found that it did work. It did work to a degree. Fear-based manipulation, easy come, easy go. I'll fire you if you don't do your job. However, the results never lasted. They never lasted. But the fourth element that was so magical is what we call the mentor manager. And I think this is really key to this topic right now, is the manager that is high on standards. We still have a job that needs to be done. We still need to be profitable. There's things that need to happen, but they're also equally high on their ability to connect, realizing that their people have a life outside of work. And every individual is different with unique desires, strengths, frustrations, heartache, and challenges in their lives. And when they were high on standards, but equally high on their ability to connect, they gained respect. That was the outcome in that employee's experience. That mentor manager may not have always been liked, but they were respected. And we called them the mentor manager because mentorship has to be chosen. That's why it was so powerful. They could have been a leader or a manager. And I think when you can become the role of the mentor in the eyes of your people, where they actively choose you, you win. Right now, in this current state that we're in, it is mentorship over management that's winning.
Oh, I love that. And as you were talking, I could picture in my head that I have probably been each one of those types of leaders, and I have had each one of those types of leaders. And it's so interesting, the different themes and trends that we, can see through this, employee-employer evolution, and how it's impacting, just like you said, where does that leave engagement? How do we figure out, our authentic style of leadership, or even admit that we might need help in that arena? It's hard to know, what am I supposed to do? So a few other trends that we wanted to address. One is quiet policing. The best way to explain this is when you are acting your wage. So when you are, I'm not getting paid this much, so I'm not going to do anything, additional. And this is when you feel like you are undervalued or underpaid for the job that you're doing. And then labor hoarding is a new one. And this means that we are hanging on to employees, even though we might not need them in the event that we are going to be understaffed. So we've experienced a lot of employee turnover. We're just going to hoard employees, so that way we are, we're covering ourselves. And that one in particular feels like it could be the most risky, because I know that when you tolerate bad behavior from an employee, right, and you're not managing that person, it can really kill employee morale. And I would love to know, Jen, how you've seen that translate, or if you've seen that translate with employee engagement.
Oh yeah, it has a huge impact because, Kara Rice, my coworker, she talks about how, it's hard to soar like an eagle when you're surrounded by turkeys. If you are a top performer, you want to be able to trust and rely on other top performers. And if I can't trust that my coworkers are doing their best work, or at least giving it their best shot, then it's hard for me to want to give my all, because like, well, I guess, like you said, we don't have any standards around here. So I guess everyone can just, sit back and coast. So we do see that there's higher levels of turnover among employees if they don't have those standards implemented and everyone has the same expectations of performance. And I think that that's a real gap in our industry, and probably many industries right now, of, to Clint's point, of these mentor managers, people who really do know how to lead, how to facilitate relationship, to have those high standards, but also be able to coach someone along the way of, all right, I see you're not meeting the standard right now. Let's talk about that. Tell me what's going on. Maybe it's a skill gap. Maybe it's something's going on at home that just makes it really difficult for me to perform right now. But having those types of relationships where you can really bring someone up to the standard in a way that's going to be most beneficial to the employee and to the team and to the organization, that's where we're really going to see the difference.
Yeah, that's such a great point. And I don't know if anyone identifies with this, but I am a person who's motivated by contributing meaningful work. And if there's not enough for me to do, that might be incentive for me to go find somewhere where I can contribute meaningfully. And I know the phrase that you're only as strong as your weakest employee is also, a very common one. And I'm sure that plays a role too. Folks who are listening are like, labor hoarding, I would like to have that problem.
I know, right?
Such high turnover. But it is a thing. There will be a period of time where there are more jobs available, and we've got less folks to fill those, and then vice versa, and people won't have as many choices. Then we'll want to be sensitive to really providing and thinking about the culture and purpose that we are offering people. They're looking for a professional home, not necessarily a stepping stone, and the career development and connection to culture and connection to purpose is really important for people to feel like they are contributing. So in my research and conversations I've had, I've seen two different perspectives on especially quiet quitting and quiet firing. You've got the employee perspective who is thinking, well, I'm protecting my boundaries, I've got poor leadership, lack of organization identification, that, well, what's the incentive for me to work harder? And separating ourselves from our work is really difficult. Our work is a huge piece of meaning and significance in our lives. And so it drastically influences how we think about ourselves. Our identity is rooted in where we work and who we're around and how we can contribute and whether or not we feel worthy or significant. So having that identification is important, but we would all be lying if we said that there's not been one time in our career that we were mad and we're like, I'm just doing the bare minimum today because that's how they think of me and that's what I'm going to do. And that attitude can influence our behavior as well. So I really encourage everyone to think about how their attitudes, behaviors, and actions, whether or not they are self-inflicted, where they're coming from, and how we are treating other people because of that. There's, I'm sure, times in my leadership career, right? I'm not perfect, that I have maybe treated someone differently because of an action that they gave me. And it takes a little bit of time to learn how to, self-manage those feelings. So you're not an employer who thinks people are lazy or passive aggressive or entitled, or, like, if you don't like it, leave, which I believe was management style 3 that Clint pointed out. So these are some of the big themes that I'm seeing between all of these different trends. That there's a communication problem. We've got complicated, loaded conversations that might be awkward, might need to happen, but we're not sure why. Performance management, conflict, that stuff is tough. And if it's not an area that you're skilled in, right, it's going to be hard to go into those conversations. connection. We've talked about that a lot today. What are we connected to? Do I feel like I'm part of an in-group or an out-group? We have job descriptions and competencies that are changing, that are different from when we might have entered the industry. And if we don't feel like we are with it or want to be with it, we could, almost put ourselves in the outs, which creates organizational disidentification, which can be really damaging. And then leadership, not wanting to ruffle any feathers. So avoiding loss in order to kind of dodge conflict instead of helping people grow and addressing those, maybe awkward conversations, or, addressing the employee who might be underperforming, or reaching out and creating these connection opportunities. We just don't want to touch it because we can't lose another person, and our regional manager is going to kill us if we do. So I'm also seeing, again, the engagement, meaningful, fulfilling work. So we left a lot of things untouched for a reason, because we wanted to clear up some of the stigmas around quiet quitting and quiet firing. So we're going to take on these questions, with the first being, is this a generational problem? We've seen the millennials, or maybe it's, older generations that are having a harder time getting connected to technology. And Clint, I would love your perspective on whether or not you think that these trends of not talking and taking action or leaving or quitting or whatever, is this a generational problem?
I would say 100% no. It is not a generational problem. It is a people problem. People are people, and people are diverse. If there's anybody that ever jumps on a webinar or stands on a stage or speaks at a conference and says, okay, if you got millennials, if you employ millennials, you got to do these 3 things. Lies. It's lies. It's all lies. Or Gen Z, if you want to retain Gen Z, you got to do these 4 things. Lies. I have met millennials that are entitled, lazy, want it now. I've also met millennials that are incredibly loyal, hardworking, dedicated. Same thing with Gen Z. Same thing with boomers. People are people. And the moment we put somebody in a box and we think that because of the age of that person or the era in which they were born, that they all think the same way, is a fallacy. It is a complete fallacy. And it's hard. It's been kind of one of the things that I've seen in my undercover research. For those of you that don't know, I've gone undercover into organizations as a millennial, as someone who was looking for a job. And we did it in the most real and authentic way, to where employees would really tell me what they felt, what they saw, what they liked, what they hated, what they didn't like. And in doing so, we created the most real and authentic data behind how great leaders were creating organizations that their people never wanted to leave. And one of the prime characteristics in the significance of a good leader, not just their success, but the significance, was when they got to the part about that person. When they looked at them as a person, not as a generation. Why? Because every employee right now is asking you as the employer, they're asking you as the leader, let me know when this workplace, let me know when your agenda, let me know when all the things that you want to do and sell and growth, all that, let me know when that gets to the part about me. And sometimes we hear that and we think to ourselves, well, those entitled little shining stars in my life, right? Like, let me know when it gets to the part about me. If I hear one more employee say that. But I would say it's not so much about entitlement as it is about good business, and realizing that every person is fighting a battle that you have no idea about. Every person grew up in a different home with a different perspective and a different viewpoint on the world. And that's where it's your job as the mentor in the story to get to the part about them where you become the advocate for them, not just the developer, not just the old boss, not just the slave driver, not just the person that's mandating the schedule, but you're truly the advocate. You're the mentor. You're the person that people, they like themselves best when they're with you, whether they're a boomer, a millennial, Gen Z, doesn't matter. Mentorship is the key, and that is a cross-generational thing. And when we look at people as people and not generations, we win.
Love it. That's so great. And you hit perfectly on, our employees acting entitled, and there's so much under there. It's very loaded, and where we see that kind of culture of hustle or boundaries. Jen, you touched on this earlier, but I would love for you to elaborate and just, is hustle culture dead?
I think to an extent, for a lot of people it is, or at least it's been reframed. And people are being a little more selective on where am I going to devote my energy? I have limited time and energy and resources personally. And so where am I going to focus my attention? And I think that when we look at from an organizational perspective, I love that Clint really brings it down to people are people. It doesn't matter how old or young you are. We all care in general about the same types of things, the things that we see over and over again through all of our employee research. And I've been doing research in this industry for the past 15 plus years. The things that keep coming up: communication. Everyone wants to know what's going on. They want clear direction. They want clear vision. They want to feel like an insider, whether they're a leasing agent that's in their first week of work, or if they're a CFO who's been with the company for 15 to 20 years. They all want to feel like they've got the insider information on what's happening in the company. So we see that. We see the compensation and incentives are important to everyone. We want to know we're getting paid a fair wage. Doesn't matter how old or young you are, how long you've been with the company. You want to feel like you're being fairly compensated. And then we see things like growth and development. I want to become, whether it's I want to move up a career ladder, or if I want to become the very best, whatever it is that I am, that's the same. We've seen those be the top three things that are motivating for employees over time, over 15 plus years. And I would venture to guess it's been going on way beyond that. So when it comes to hustle culture, I don't know that we're celebrating it as much. I'm so busy. I'm so busy. Everyone talks about how busy they are. That's how it's been. I think people are wanting to talk more about what are they most focused on right now? And it might not be solely about career. I think their conversation and their devotion of where they're putting their time, they're becoming a little more diverse and not just about let's keep it super busy. So in that sense, I think it may be a little bit of a bygone.
Yeah, that's great. And you touched on communication a little bit, and I would love to know, just as a follow-up question, Jen, communication, if no one's talking, if employers aren't talking, employees aren't talking, who's responsible to start that conversation?
Oh my gosh, leadership. Leaders have to start talking. And here's the thing. Here's what was fascinating during the pandemic. The companies who have the greatest level of retention and the highest level of engagement were the companies where the leaders stayed in the forefront and kept the conversation going. So the ones who adopted Zoom or Teams immediately and started doing regular town hall meetings where they invited all of the employees, that's where we saw true engagement, because they were saying, here's what's going on. Here's what we know today. Here's how we're conducting business right now. And they kept them updated. And everyone felt like an insider. Everyone felt like it was, they knew what was going on, and it wasn't second or third or fourth hand information that had been filtered through various levels of the organization. And then on the flip side of that, when those organizations reached out to their employees and said, tell us how things are going, tell us what's going on, what's getting in your way, because the leaders, those ones who had been visible throughout the pandemic, they were getting the higher levels of response rates and feedback from their employees, and it was more real. They were saying, here's how it's really going. And it did start the conversation, and it greased that wheel so that there was more of an exchange going on and on and on. But the companies where the leaders were like passing information through, and that was their primary mode of disseminating information, we saw the engagement levels go down. We saw turnover increase. And when they asked for feedback, employees were like, I don't think you really mean it. So I'm not going to waste my time because I don't think anything's going to happen. So it has to start absolutely with leadership.
Yeah.
I was just going to say, I'd piggyback off that of what Jen's saying. We found that really employees, they spelled mentorship Time. Granted, they can't spell that well, but that's how they spelt it. Time. Yeah, how do we get more of it? The good leaders, for the most part, most of the time they know what they need to do. But the masterful leaders, especially during this past 2-year period of time, became masters at learning what not to do. Instead of the to-do lists, they became masters at the to-don't lists. The things that I'm going to stop doing so that I can give my people more time, so that I can be more present. And some of us as leaders, we hear that and we go, well, nice idea, Clint. I don't have that kind of time. I'm busy. You don't understand like the stress I'm under. And to some extent, like that's valid. But also I would say in the same breath, then if that's the mentality, if we're not willing to see the things that we need to stop doing so we can give people more time, then have fun being a solo entrepreneur, or be okay with the revolving door of turnover that's costing your organization thousands and thousands of dollars every time somebody leaves, or even worse, when they mentally check out and stay. So I think that learning how to say no to a few things and to give people your time is critical.
Yeah, so that's such great feedback. And really goes into the next topic. And right after here, we'll talk about, some multifamily paradigms where what you just said is such a common pattern of behavior where our community managers or regional managers, they're so overwhelmed and there's so much to do. It's like you're a supervisor, but you're supervising finances, you're supervising, property status. You almost forget that you are supervising people, and creating and carving out that time to really invest back into employees is critical. Supervisor attention is so powerful. It's actually called the Hawthorne effect. So the Hawthorne effect says that the more attention a manager gives employees, that the employees will reciprocate that with performance, because it means that much to be recognized and to have that type of connection to your mentor, your leader, your organization. So here we know that when you couple employee experience with customer experience, you get return on investment. So we've talked about a few of these, but Jen and I were talking about some exit interview stats that I would love to share, because it's not a common practice in our industry apparently. So I'd love for you just to chat about exit interviews really quick.
Well, I know that exit interviews, people talk a lot about them, and I'm just going to go out on a limb, and this is my opinion only. I feel like they're a waste of time. And our stats show that only 5% of employees will willingly participate in an exit interview without being like begged and pleaded or having it set as a requirement. And I think that it comes back to what Clint was talking about. It's like a light bulb moment for a minute when he said that, is that it's time. And why should I respond now that I'm leaving, now that I'm at the door? Why didn't you spend that time up front? And if you had given me that time while I was there and I felt valuable and I felt like I was a part of the conversation, maybe I wouldn't be here at this point right now. And so my advice would be, if you're trying to figure out where do we devote time with conversation and getting feedback from employees, exit interview is too late, because here's what I see. The feedback that we do see in exit interviews for a particular company or for a particular organization, the things that they're saying, if they are being honest about what's frustrating to them or the obstacles that have been getting in their way, guess what? That's all the stuff that we've been seeing in their current employee feedback of what's happening right now. It's not really different. So if we had spent that time and focus on trying to resolve some of those issues of the current employees, we wouldn't be hearing it on the exit interviews. It's the same kind of stuff. Let's focus the time while they're there. And I guarantee you're going to see higher levels of engagement and higher levels of performance.
Yeah. And I can imagine that might be a reason why employees stay. Do you have any thoughts, Clint, on what maybe the top few reasons employees stay with their organizations are?
Yeah, I would love to again, piggyback off of what Jen said, that instead of the exit interview, we've seen amazing leaders do what I call a status interview. This is not a performance review. This is not a stay interview. This is not an exit interview. It's a status interview. My background was actually in the medical field, and we'd work in the OR, and the doctor would always yell out during the procedure, "Hey, what's the status? I need a status update. Give me a status check." Well, what the doctor was really asking for is, tell me what the vital signs are reading, right? What's the heart rate, body temperature, blood pressure of the patient, right? We have vital signs that determine whether we're alive or not. And when we would look at the vitals, when we check the status would determine treatment. So we treat the patient. And so then what do you think we did after we treated the patient? We rechecked the status. And you continue that cycle until healthy stability is maintained long term. the reason I have a job is because the perception of leadership versus the reality of the employee experience is usually night and day different. All the leaders on this call, I think it's important to remember that there's no incentive. There really isn't an incentive for an employee to walk up to you and to tell you how they really feel, especially when they're frustrated. Could you imagine? I mean, if an employee walks up and says, "Hey, listen, Doug, I think this could help you. Every time we win as a team, you take all the credit, and then every time we lose as a team, you blame everybody else. Happy Tuesday, Doug." Like, no, they don't say that. They don't say that. Instead, what do? They just leave. They leave, and it leaves the manager scratching their head, going, "I never saw it coming," or it's just nobody wants to work anymore. Nobody wants to work. My question would be is, do they want to work for you? We're here on this call to empower you and also challenge you to some degree because you are the leader in the equation. And it's your opportunity to check and understand the status of your people right now. 87%. We did research with 57 different organizations during COVID-19. And the stat currently now is that 87% of all employees working at their job are currently looking for a new job right now. 87% of your team, whether that's true or not for you, I think it's worth thinking about. 87%. If someone comes and pays them a little more, better work-life environment, a little more flexibility, maybe higher compensation, a better boss, they're gone. And so we've seen, and great leaders have done this in one way, shape, or another. And I think this is gold. I think this is really helpful and hopefully an actionable, tangible thing that leaders on this call could take and apply. And I would recommend you create an opportunity with your people to do a status interview. Think right now of two rock stars, two people on your team that if they came to you and handed in a 2 weeks resignation, it would just sink your heart. It would be, oh, come on. We can't lose you. Who are those people? I challenge you to create a moment with them. You could do it over Zoom. You could do it on a phone call. You could sit down with them. And first start with vocal praise. That's key to this. You've got to create the psychological safety. Pour into them. Help them to see their worth, their potential, why you need them. And then ask them these 3 questions. Number 1, what can I do to keep you here? Question number 2 is, what is getting in the way of your success in this job? And question number 3, what can I do as your manager and as your leader to help you to get there, to help you to become more successful? Those 3 questions, what can I do to keep you here? What's getting in the way of your success? And what can I do as the advocate to make this story better for you? The crazy thing is most of those 3 questions are only usually asked in the exit interview, right? When the employee's already checked out. And then it dawns on you, you go, my gosh, I should have asked these questions 6 months ago. And so it's very simple. And some people might hear that and they go, I'm afraid to ask those questions. What if I ask, what can I do to keep you here? And they're like, well, you can increase my pay, give me a corner office, big windows, a couple ski passes, and some Cheetos. I'll stay. You can't do that. What the status interview gives you the opportunity to do is to look for variables, look for other opportunities. Maybe you can't pay them more, but maybe you can help them out on flexibility. Maybe you never knew that they wanted to become a leader, and we can work on a growth development plan that will help them to become something like that. And at the end of the day, if you can't find something, that you agree upon, then my goodness, at least you asked. At least you asked. And so that's just a little hopeful, actionable, tangible thing that people could apply today, tomorrow, with the people on their team to help create a proper status so we can treat people better.
Yeah, I love that. And can you imagine like how valued you would feel as an employee if someone came to you and asked you those questions? I mean, I would stay just because you asked. You know, it makes you feel so valued. That I know we are getting close to time. And I mean, we pretty much covered this one, you know, having the self-awareness of knowing where you're at and where you need to be. And Clint elaborated on that mentorship over management. You know, a lot of this comes down to being brave enough to talk, to being brave enough to listen, and to embrace moving forward as a mentor with your mentee together. You know, there's so many things that we can do to change this and be able to Oh, thanks, Clint, for typing in those questions.
You're welcome.
And to be able to, promote employee development, encourage people to stay, and, being a human, caring and investing is so critically important. For our Graceful customers, we have lots of different solutions to help you, from resident and employee surveys, training courses like leadership, performance management, things to help you get your skills underneath your belt, and even policies that maybe if you wanted to establish that the status interview is a protocol, we've got solutions where you could be able to formalize that. So we'll have time to take like a question, but I did want to let the winners know of who won the drawing for Clint's book. And if you are interested in getting in touch with Clint, yeah, he gave the most killer virtual presentation when I was at FPI that just knocked our socks off. But you can learn how to get in touch with him. His website's there. And you can find I Love It Here on Amazon or any major book retailers. I've read it. It's great, clearly. And Jen, how can they get in touch with you?
You can find me at jen@swiftbunny.com, and I'll put that in the chat. But I would love to be helpful to any of you who are trying to figure out employee engagement. That's what we're all about.
Yeah. And it sounds like I'm looking just through the questions here, and we talked about stay interviews. Someone asked, what does EX and CX stand for? That is employee experience and customer experience. And then let's just do this last question really quick. It's about shifting from maybe work-life balance to work-life harmony. Because to me, balance implies comparison and endless work to achieve a fleeting result that in the end isn't worth the effort of balancing. Harmony implies that all the elements of work and life coexist in such a way that brings more joy. I love that. How do we feel about work-life harmony instead of work-life balance?
I love that so much because, we're complicated as humans. There's so many things that give us joy. And I like to think about the nice to have or nice to do and the have to do. And in all parts of our lives, there are things that we have to do that might not be fun, like laundry and changing the toner in the printer, but there are things that need to be done. But if we can balance and have harmony between the things that we have to do and the things that we really enjoy doing, the parts of our jobs that are really fulfilling and bringing joy, and the parts of our personal lives that bring us happiness and joy. If we can find that harmony between all the different things, knowing that not every part of it is amazing, some of them are challenging, but I think that really does make a big difference. And especially if we can talk about those things with our coworkers, with our supervisors, and with our loved ones.
Yeah. Clint, any final thoughts?
Yeah, James brought up that great concept of work-life harmony. I'm a musician, so harmony is key for me as a drummer. Even though I don't have an instrument that harmonizes, it's an essential part of the band and allowing other people to sync, right? We talk about time, we talk about connection. It's a huge music principle. And I think what a concept, right? Could we create a place where people don't just love the job, but they actually love who they are while they're at the job? Could you create a workplace environment where people could play to their passions? They had a sense of purpose where they felt like they were doing something bigger than themselves. And then lastly, they were able to provide in a way that was sufficient for them. All of you on this call and the opportunity that you have in leadership, you're beautiful storytellers, not in the stories that you write, but in the stories that you help other people to create. And when you become the mentor in that story, you're never forgotten. That is the difference between significant leadership and just being a leader, or even a successful leader. How do you become that significant individual that because of you, I get to live a better story? And what a calling, what an opportunity, what a privilege. And every day in the position that you hold, even from the frontline employee to the upper CEO, we all have that opportunity to lead and to influence and to create a place where we spend so much of our time. This place that we call work, that truly can be a place of harmony, a place of peace and joy, a place where we truly say, I love it here.
Ugh.
What a concept.
What a concept. Well, I loved this webinar and feel so grateful to have both you, Clint, and Jen take this on with me. Thank you so much for all of your contributions and effort and thoughts, and just for being here. Will we have a recording? Yes, we'll have the recording. We'll have slides. Graceful customers, it will be in the CRC and available for you. So we will, yep, Kayla just said she's from the Graceful team. We'll send the recording and slides out soon so you can listen to it on repeat. A couple people already ordered your book, Clint. So gosh, what a success. Thank you all for joining us today. And until next time, see you soon.
Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you.